Our next honoree is one of the world's premier inventors and urban designers. As the director of MIT's Senseable City Lab, as a founding partner of international design studio Carlo Ratti Associati, he then applies that research into the real world, bringing daring conceptualization to life. This Momentum Award winner is Carlo Ratti. Accepting the award on his behalf is Michael Lewis of Carlo Ratti Associati.
So thank you to Newsweek and Georgia Tech for this honor. Carlo is very, very sorry he wasn't able to be here this evening, but I am very pleased to accept on his behalf. And seeing the other honorands speaking about humanizing cities reminds me about how a lot of the work that Carlo and the team has done, leveraging technology to help cities be smarter and to respond to the human element. Maybe we'll see in the video some of the designs that we've done have buildings that actually respond and move out of the way of people as they're moving within it. So we're very honored to be among these amazing other recipients.
Well, Michael, I want to say that we have 3 videos. I mean, there's so much incredible work from Carlo. We took what we got. So I hope that that the selections we have, I know they can't represent the whole.
The teaser, like you said.
Yeah. I mean, is there anything, if there's anything, in terms of mobility in cities, are there any projects you would encourage the audience to Google, to look up?
Well, right off the bat, I think a lot of you are familiar with Uber and Lyft have introduced ride sharing, where if passengers are going the same direction, it's more efficient to use the same vehicle as opposed to one per person. And that technology was based on research that the team did at Carlo Ratti Associati, where it was actually in New York City, in fact. And we found that you could get all the same passengers to the same destinations with maybe just a couple of minutes longer than otherwise, with something like a third of the cars on the road. So like the previous honorand was saying, it's getting the cars off the street and making room for people. There's another called the Digital Water Pavilion, where it's a building that was done for the World Expo in Zaragoza 2008. And the walls in the building are made of water. The theme of that expo was water, actually. And when you approach the wall of the building, the water parts like the Red Sea to let you in. So those are 2 examples right off the bat of buildings that or technologies and buildings that are responding to the need of people. But there are many, many others on the website, carloratti.com. There's, as you said, Ellen, there's dozens of projects there.
I know.
It's hard to keep up with them sometimes.
Welcome, Carlo. So, Carlo, I'm going to turn you around so you can see the audience here. And they can see you. Hi, everybody wave. So, Carlo, we watched just only 3 of the videos. We saw a little bit on rowboats. We saw UFO with the drones. And then we saw the circular village. So I know it doesn't do justice to all of the work that you've done. But it just was such a pleasure to really see so much invention and such different kinds of approaches. Tell us what you would like the world to really learn from your work.
All right. So, okay, so what I was saying, I'll tell you what I learned. I learned from Herb Simon. Herb Simon was, as many of you know, a great researcher. He won the Nobel Prize in economics in the past century, and he wrote an amazing book called The Science of the Artificial. In there he says that actually the natural sciences look at how the world is, and design looks at how the world could be or ought to be. And so I think, for me, the important thing is really how can we use design to change the places we live in? How design can become almost like a way of living in cities and trying to transform them and transform the present into, hopefully, a better future.
Every project you do, I think, picking up on that, I mean, they're so unique it kind of boggles my mind to imagine the creative process that, that you go through. But it appears to me that what is linking all these different projects is how you use new technologies to frame new kinds of design opportunities. As you said, to envision the world as it might be. But whether it's sensors on boats, to crowdsource designs for murals painted by drones, that's how it appears to me. But can you describe a bit more what kinds of design opportunities for cities new technologies pose for us?
Yes, and I would say you're totally right. I think today there's a great opportunity for cities. And the fact is that all of those technologies that change our lives over the past 20, 30 years, they're entering the city. They're entering physical space. You could say that the internet is becoming Internet of Things. And so we can actually understand the city much better. We just heard it before. We can actually use the data to design better cities. And so there's certainly a great opportunity there. However, I think we shouldn't use just that repertoire, just those technologies. I think there's something more profound here. And that is that if you look at what has happened, at the end of the 20th century, people have explored a lot kind of how technology is making us cyborg, which is basically taking the human side of things, or taking nature and augmenting nature with the world of the natural with the world of the artificial. Well, I think today we have a symmetrical challenge. And that's how we go from the world of the artificial towards the world of the natural. And so in that hybridization is really where a lot of potential opportunities lies for cities. Digital is part of that, but it's also much more than just digital.
So, yeah, I mean, I think it's one of your projects that, an early work, but that I was really fascinated with was Trash Track. Or track from the Seattle project. Do you want to just describe a little bit about that? Because I think that actually it's the digital and yet understanding something about the natural that we didn't understand before, actually, in a funny way.
Yeah, you're right. Well, in that case, we got really interested into waste. And as you know, today we know everything about how objects are made. If you think about your computer, this computer I'm speaking from, we know every chip inside it, where it was produced, how it moved on the planet, how it became this machine. But actually, when we stop using it, and first we sell it, and at some point somebody will throw it away, then we know very little about it. Today we know where objects are coming from, we don't know where they go. And so we started thinking about, how can we better learn about that the journey. Now, the supply chain, where things are coming from, has been studied over the past few decades, optimized. As I said, we know everything about it. But in actually what you could call the removal chain, there's still a lot of inefficiencies. And also there's a lot of pollution that happens there. So we decided, well, why don't we use technology itself in order to better understand this? And in Seattle, we did the first experiment. In Seattle, we kept on working on this over the years. But we developed little chips to put on trash and then to follow trash to see where it goes. And there were many surprises. We saw all these kind of thousands of pieces of trash from Seattle moving across all the United States, and we could follow some of those paths. Some things going into the right place. Actually, some things also gone where they shouldn't end up. And so with the idea that in a world where data tells us so much more about cities and about the environment, then, we can use this information in order to design better processes. But I'll tell you something more. For me, there was another very important lesson in the project. So it's, first of all, as I said, it's about efficiency optimization. But the other thing is that data itself, if we share it with citizens, can be very, very powerful. And so what we were doing there was actually share the information with all the volunteers who came with trash. And so they could see what happened to the things they were throwing away. And then we gave them questionnaires. And some of the questions were about, has this changed your behavior? And it turns out it did in a significant way. I'll tell you a little anecdote about a person who came to us and said, I used to drink water in plastic bottles every day, throw them away, and kind of forgot about them. But now, after the project, I know that those bottles go to a landfill a few miles from home, will stay there forever. So because of that, I stopped consuming plastic every day with this. So for me, the other lesson there is that data itself, if we share with citizens, can be a very powerful agent for behavioral change. And really, behavioral change is our only hope when we look at the global challenges that we face, starting from climate change.
So I love the idea of redesigning cities with data. And I think we've heard tonight from several of the other winners, various ways they're using data to make better cities. But there is also the dark side. Data can certainly intrude on privacy. Data in a police state can be horrendous. So how do you caution cities and your students about being also very much aware about that dark side of data?
You're absolutely right. And, every technology, as we all know, has the good, the bad, and the ugly, and that applies, also to using data in cities. At the same time, I believe we must use data. That's the first point. The great Buckminster Fuller once said, we can either be architects of the future or victims of the future. Unless we experiment with things, we'll be victims of the future and how those things will evolve. So the first important thing is we need to certainly to play with data in order to understand how it can make our lives better, but also what we shouldn't do. And I think what we try to do at the lab is really you design to explore different scenarios. And in some cases, there could be positive scenarios. Think about the one you mentioned just now about, tracking trash. But in other cases, we deliberately want to use design also to see something that could be less utopian. Let me tell you, we had a project at the Venice Biennale that was the first time ever back in 2006 when we used data from millions of people in a big city. And the data was tracked in real time to really map the metabolism, movements of the whole city. And we knew that was an incredibly powerful thing, but also wanted to show the dystopian side of it, how this could be used for control. And if you do that, then design is the beginning of a conversation. It's what some people call speculative design. It helps people to think about, again, how the same technology can be used for good and for bad. And then, it can also prompt people to develop antibodies. If we do it right, if we show also the negative side, then, what happens with hacking. There's two types of hackers. There are white hat hackers and black hat hackers. When you think about white hat hackers, what they try to do is look at the vulnerability of the system in order to fix it. And so that's also what we can do as designers or researchers. We also look at the vulnerability of some of these technologies, how they could lead us onto the wrong path, so we can actually avoid it before we start it.
That leads very much to my last question. You've described your work in terms of urban design as more about experimenting on the city rather than master planning. So could you elaborate?
Well, let me say also there's a bit of semantics here. When you think about master planning, you can map the city. And while the city is really the result of all of us, is this beautiful emerging system. And all the times, by the way, can you still hear me? Because now I see you frozen. Yes. But yes, and because all the I saw you frozen now. But all the times when people try to yes, but when people try to master the city, to control the city, that usually ended up in disaster. There's a famous picture from the 1920s of Le Corbusier, a famous architect, French architect from the time, and basically, that's himself presenting his vision for Paris. And at the time, his vision of Paris was quite simple. Was basically destroy most of the city, keep just a few souvenirs from the past, such as Notre Dame, and replace everything with modernist skyscrapers. And there is this picture that was taken at the time with himself presenting the model in a pavilion called the Pavilion of the New Spirit. And it was more or less this time of the year in 1923. And you see him, the model, his hand, the hand of Le Corbusier, the hand of the architect, but almost the hand of God, making decisions for millions of people without even bothering to ask them. And I think in the idea of master planning, there is still a lot of that approach that in the 20th century has led to a lot of urban disaster. And I think what we can do actually this century is change that approach. And I think what we should do is really, yes, as architects, designers, we can make proposals, we can show different ways we can actually change the city. We can kind of be, you could say, mutagens, like it happens with natural evolution. We can, create and generate mutations. But finally, ultimately, I think we want to use this in order to enact a bottom-up process so that people can say what they like, what they don't like, and let the city develop a city that's a result of our collective action. Let citizens pick what type of city they want to live in. And I think that's different than just master planning.
I agree. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This has really been a pleasure. We've had a fabulous evening, and I'm going to invite the audience to clap for you, and I'm going to let you see them.
Thank you very, very much.